You're watching BCTV. We're all about Brantford. You're watching BCTV, Brantford Government Television, a service of Brantford Community Television. This program is brought to you in part through the support of the town of Brantford.
All right, we're going to get started with the Town of Brantford Board of Finance regular meeting for March 27th, 2023. It's a meeting and it's also a budget workshop. First on the agenda is to approve minutes of the January 30th, 2023 meeting.
I'll move them. I'll second it.
Moved by Harry, seconded by Jeff. For discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Next is to have citizens' communication with items that are on the agenda. Is anybody from the audience who'd like to comment with regards to items that are on the agenda? If none, we'll move on to item number 3. Number 3, 4, 5, and 6 are with regards to the pension, the other post-employment benefits, volunteer, fire, and the Coastal Resiliency Fund. Our financial advisors are en route, so we will defer those items and move to item number 7, which is to consider and, if appropriate, approve the following fiscal 23 budget transfer request from the assessor. And we have a letter from Barbara Neal, the assessor, requesting $20,617 to be transferred from regular wages and transferred into overtime. Jim, do you have additional information on this?
Nothing really to add other than the fact that it's from within her budget and that they are actually filling some of the hours from the vacancy with overtime.
Okay. Thanks.
I'll move that.
It's been moved by Victor.
Second.
Seconded by Jeff. Is there discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next is number 8, which is to consider and, if appropriate, approve the following fiscal 23 budget transfer from the tax collector from tax refunds $19,960 into overtime $19,960. We have a letter from Robert Imperato, the tax collector, with regards to his request for overtime for processing payments and other back taxes. Robert, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening.
Hi, Bob.
Hello. Again, as we continue to right the ship, we have a bit of overtime that's still on board with us. Some of the items that affected our overtime budget is the Bank of America situation, which we had discussed our last meeting, where we found that we had payments that we had to research. It took us, a couple of months to get that done, as well as working on the mobile home process of identifying the issues within the mobile home portfolio, as well as collection enforcement as we went forward, looking through all of those past due accounts from 2007, 2008 forward, and coming up with a plan. Again, that B of A issue was with the lockbox. I'm sorry I didn't explain that properly to you. Also, we had a issue between QDS and our assessors, where we went in and did all the transfers, and then as the assessor brought the bridge over of information on real estate, and automobiles, anything that had a name change through the new software package, it reverted everything back to July 1st of 22. So we had to go back in and change those back so folks would get the correct bill. So we just continue on with that and doing our forensic studies on what we're seeing within that portfolio.
Okay, thanks, Bob. Questions on this transfer?
I'll move it, Joe.
Moved by Jeff.
I'll second.
Seconded by Pam. For discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Number 9 is pursuant to Section 42-1 of the Code of the Town of Branford, the Director of Human Resources requests a favorable opinion for a bid waiver on a 5-year extension to the existing agreement with ADP for Human Resource Information System, HRIS, at the rates proposed. Welcome, Margaret.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Joe.
So she's provided that information with regards to the increase, modest increase for 1.5% over that 5-year term. Right now, you're spending $73,464 on an annual basis.
Approximately. Yes, that's correct. We're not finished, obviously, with this year. This is a pretty robust product now. We've added to it it's not just a payroll process anymore. We have our whole HRS system on there. This includes advanced time and attendance. It includes handling all the ACA 1095C tax and compliance work. We've added Document Cloud, which is a software that actually takes in all of our personnel filing. That was a new addition. So I think that I'm here to encourage us to continue with this product on a 7-year basis, which will come in at less expensive. A 3-year contract is a 5% increase and total increase, and a 7-year contract would be a 7% increase, 1% this year and 1.5% each year thereafter.
Okay, and questions on this request? Go with the Charlie first, and then Victor.
What do you recommend?
I'm recommending a 7-year contract.
7, huh?
I mean, a 5-year contract, 7%, at 7%, sorry.
5-year contract.
That was my question. So, okay.
Victor, you good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Does this have, is this also web-based?
Yes,
So folks sign in with their phones?
yes, we have self-service. And
Self-service, yeah.
correct, right on the phone.
And does it geofence?
I don't know what that means.
So do you know where someone is when they're clocking in or out?
No, I don't know where they are.
So there's no geofencing on it?
That's correct.
Okay.
But there are restrictions, obviously, as to where someone can clock in. They can't clock in from home. There's a certain radius that they're...
Within a certain radius, yeah.
Yes, that's correct.
Charlie?
Margaret, is there an escape clause if we go by the 5 years?
Yeah, it's the same contract. Yes, we would certainly still owe some expenses, whatever money's obviously spent, as well as for the rest of the years.
I mean, there's no penalty, is there, if we cancel at the end of, say, 3 years?
I couldn't quote you what that penalty is. It's in the contract. I'd have to go back to get that information, but I'm sure there's a penalty of some sort.
Yeah, sometimes there's terms that there's a notice period.
60-day notice period.
You think so? 60 days?
I think this is a
typical.
product that
Pardon?
it keeps growing, and it's very useful for us, and we have a very good relationship with ADP. They're very responsive to us. Whenever we do have problems with it, we're not concerned about the type of customer service that we're getting from, so it's been very good.
That's important.
That's absolutely important.
And you're paying weekly or bi-weekly?
We're paying monthly.
Monthly
That's correct.
for all staff?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. That's good. Okay, other questions?
I think to clarify, the fee isn't paid monthly to ADP,
Yes,
but the employees are being paid by
biweekly, and some contracts are weekly.
or
Okay.
weekly, yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
That's okay, yeah, that was, okay, other questions on this request for a positive recommendation?
I'll move it.
I'll second
Been moved, seconded by Jeff. Discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. Let's see, where, so that's, so item, why don't I just read that, the resolution, so we're clean on number 9 before I move to number 10. So Resolved that pursuant to Section 4-1 of the Code of the Town of Branford, the Board of Finance recommends that the Board of Selectmen approve a 5-year extension with ADP with the new rates effective July 1st, 2023. Again, somebody want to move that?
I'll move the resolution, Joe.
Moved by Jeff, seconded by Harry. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Next, number 10, is to consider and if appropriate approve a request from the Director of Human Resources to change the crime analyst position to a manager of police accreditation, crime research and special projects, and the corresponding salary adjustment. We have received information with regards to this position, which is a union position, correct?
That's correct.
And we have Jamie and Margaret again.
Sure, thank you. This position has increased in responsibility. As everyone knows, the police accreditation process has been quite extensive, and the crime analyst position has also grown. So I've enclosed a job description that describes the changes and the differences between the crime analyst position and the recommendation for the new position, which is manager of police accreditation, crime research, and special projects. The police chief, myself, and Jamie are recommending a salary increase for this position to be competitive within the market. We've also enclosed some market data. I think recent market data is enclosed in the packet I gave. And we're recommending that this position increase from a current total annual, which is being paid now of $52,204, to an annual salary of $65,000. We are requesting this now, at this time, effective May 1st, because the person in the position is leaving for a state position, in fact, a similar position that's paying more. So we are, the chief and I are very anxious to start the recruiting process. It's a unique position and one that he feels strongly about and is dependent upon within his department.
Okay. So we have the detailed information with regards to the job description and recommendation by the Director of Human Resources. Questions?
So are we eliminating the crime analyst position?
Correct.
Eliminating?
Yes, we're incorporating the crime analyst responsibilities in this new position.
Got it.
And as far as the job requirements, this is not a police officer position.
You are correct. It is not. It's an administrative professional position.
And it's really a statistical, I don't see a criminal justice background or anything other than analyst type of responsibilities.
Yeah, it's more of a technical position because of the nature of the analysis that's done, as I understand it. It's more software driven. They have their own software, and this person actually implements it. This individual will also keep track of all the types of police activity happening in the town, reports that back. The chief often needs that for reports that he has to submit to the state, of course, and other people. So it's quite substantive in nature. It's a job, I would say, that has certainly grown in the last 5 years, not just within Branford, but within the whole police community. Almost all of the major police departments have this kind of position, and that's creating a competition right now that under.
But this person would need to know the criminal justice accreditation and all, for them to be, those are prerequisites for the position.
Correct.
So it's not a training position, that someone would have to come in with the experience.
Ideally, we want someone with experience, but it's a fairly new position within the market, so we won't really know who we can get until we actually advertise. And I haven't been able to advertise because of the salary. We know we won't attract an experienced person at 45. So we are asking for this $65,000 with the hope that we will find the right person. The union has approved this position also at $65,000.
Does the person manage direct reports, or
No.
they're just like a program type manager? Is that why the manager title is there?
This will be an individual contributor who manages projects, also special projects. It'll be, I would call it more of a projects manager than a manager of others.
So this is a non-exempt position?
Correct.
Okay. Charlie?
So we had met with the police chief, and he explained the need for this, and he was sorry that he lost his person because of the wages, and that person is going to work, for the state. So it is a important position. He needs somebody, and it's a low salary, and so I'm sympathetic to it.
Thank you.
So with that, you're making a motion?
I can, yes.
I'll
I'll
second
move
it.
it.
Been moved.
I'll second it, Joe.
Seconded. Jamie, do you have any comments on that?
No, I mean, I think it was well stated, the need for this position. Just one point of clarification, we were actually going to come forward, we recognized in our discussions with chief and staff that this position had many additional responsibilities that warranted a salary adjustment. As Margaret laid out, it is a relatively new position in terms of the field. A lot of it has to do with the mandates that are being driven by the state, but also the certification that we certainly are pursuing, the CALIA certification. So we were going to come forward for, it's unfortunate we lost this particular individual because she did a tremendous job in really growing with the position and really providing the support that the department and the administration needed. So I just wanted to clarify, we were coming, it's unfortunate, but we can't compete with the position that she had, but we still felt it was warranted to come forward because we know when we go to the market, we need to at least have a somewhat competitive salary for this position.
Thanks, Jamie. Other discussion on this transfer request? And actually, this is an approval of this position, and then there's going to be a subsequent transfer that will follow. It's actually transfer out of contingency, Jim?
Yes.
That's the second part of your letter. So I'm going to, the transfer request that ties to this would fund the position through the end of the fiscal year?
Yes.
That's really, it would be transferred out of contingency for 26-15, right? And
Yeah.
into regular salaries and wages for 26-15, so.
And it assumes a May start date.
Right.
It's going to take them some time.
And what's a contingency balance, Jim?
Sure, the contingency balance, and this is if you approve all of the items tonight, and I have it in my folder here. It's up here. Yeah, that's right. So all the items tonight, the contingency balance would drop to 645,926.
Say that again, Jim.
Sure. 645,926.
Thanks, Jim. Okay, so as I mentioned, it's a transfer from contingency 2615 into regular salaries and wages 2615, and that really would be the motion that would then support this request. Somebody want to move that?
I'll move the transfer.
Been moved by Victor,
Second it, Joe.
seconded by Jeff. Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Okay. Next, what we're going to do is take item number 11, and then we're going to go back to item number 3. So, number 11 is to consider and if appropriate, approve a request from the first selectman for a salary adjustment for the director of the animal shelter. And we have a letter from Jamie with regards to this. You want to present that, Jamie?
Sure. And Margaret worked on this too, so feel free to add anything. So this is for a salary adjustment for the director of the animal shelter, which is currently has an annual salary of $68,898, and requesting a salary adjustment that would be effective actually from March 3rd, 2023 of $82,898. To give a little bit of background to the board, this position is in the supervisors union. The supervisors union was created, just established, I think the first contract is just about 10 years old now. And they've had a couple contracts since that time. This individual in this position, and you just heard as we described the justification for the last position. I think Margaret laid out the case, how that position evolved over time in terms of expanded responsibilities that warranted and really created a new position that we asked to have funded. When looking at these positions in terms of the justification for the salary adjustments, we often look at where they are in the market, the positions are in the market. We look at if there has been added responsibilities. Typically, we don't give somebody an adjustment due to just being busier than normal. Okay, you use the example: if somebody comes in and they're giving, there's more storms or there's more applications coming in, there's more, but it's still in line with your day-to-day operations. That comes with the territory. There's ebbs and flows to any position. Evaluating this position, and the individual had come to me a while ago and had expressed concern with their salary as compared to the market and for the responsibilities that they undertake. There was a contract negotiations. This issue was not addressed at that time, my understanding, from the results. Individual had come to me again a few months ago. I feel it's my obligation and my responsibility as the Chief Administrative Officer really to make these evaluations and hear from all of the employees, but certainly our department heads are really an extension of the administration. The department heads are the ones who on a day-to-day basis really deliver programs and services that the community relies upon, that are mandated by the state. And we want to ensure that, they're treated fairly. If you were to simply look at a job description, you may say, well, this individual took this position and we don't see there's additional responsibility. Well, but we can certainly see, the position has really grown over certainly the past 10 years since the union was created, but certainly since this individual has taken on the position. And, in terms of the programs that are provided to the community, in terms of the effort to identify additional revenue sources has grown, and those efforts are ongoing, and there's commitment there. In terms of the level of service that we provide to not only our town, but to the town of North Branford, in terms of managing and supervising staff. The staff consists not only of full-time and part-time employees, but there is a significant volunteer pool that needs to be managed. And this individual, this position, assumes that responsibility. This department also, you have to keep functions 24 hours a day, essentially. There's animals that are under our care 24 hours a day, 365. The facility is open 7 days a week. And also, on those holidays, those animals need to be tended to. This individual has the responsibility to ensure that proper care is given. When you look at the market and try to make a comparison, certainly Dan Cosgrove Animal Shelter, the town of Branford, has distinguished itself from others throughout the state and beyond. That is documented, widely documented, and validated through the support that we get, not only across the region, the state, but throughout, around the country. It is known for what it does. And whether, you feel that should be the function of this shelter or not, well, the community has certainly supported it, and I feel has given resounding endorsement of the work that they do. So looking at this position, and I believe I forwarded to all the board members, the salary range for this bargaining unit. And I looked at, really, again, so now it's really, how do we value our department heads? And certainly, we have to be fair to the individuals, fair to the other members, and fair to the taxpayer. And where do we rank? And I certainly, if you look at that, I think there's a clear outlier in terms of this department head, in terms of the compensation at $68,000 as compared to all the other department heads. Now, keep in mind, this is a supervisor's union, so there's department heads, and there's also essentially assistant department heads that make up this bargaining unit. Pulling that $68,898 out of the equation, you do an average of the other department heads. The average salary, now, I recognize that there's an engineer, has an engineering certification, have various certifications, but this individual certainly has a certification, has a state certification, and has actually under state statute quite a bit of responsibility and authority. The average comes to $101,868. I think there's a great disparity there. What we're asking this position to do and what the position does do, and compared to looking at that average. When I average the whole entire bargaining unit, and again, this is also assistance as well. The average, pulling that position out, the $68,000, the average comes to $94,092. So my analysis, what I was initially going to come forward, as I mentioned, was the $85,000 for this position. Being in a bargaining unit, it required the union's approval or vote on this. So I did have a meeting with them, we reviewed it. They ended up taking a vote, and that's where they came forward with the $82,898 effective March 3rd. That's the date they took the vote. So come before you to ask for your support for the $82,898 effective March 3rd this year.
Okay, so thank you, Jamie. Anything you'd like to add, Margaret?
No, I think Jamie covered it well.
Jamie covered it, okay. So what we can do is Jim provided us with some small transfers that really effectuate the change in salary. If I'm not mistaken, Jim, that's the 4580?
It is.
So for the sake of I guess, streamlining here, I would entertain a motion to transfer from contingency 4560 into transfer out of 4560. 4580, thank you. So we'll take that one shot at a time there. If there's
Move that transfer.
the pleasure of the board. Victor moved that transfer.
Second.
Seconded by Charlie. Are there questions or comments or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and then there's a transfer of operating transfer in, this is within Fund 206, which is the animal control budget of 4580, and a corresponding authorization to spend regular wages and salaries, 4580. Moved that by Victor,
Second.
seconded by Charlie. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
And then to finish it off, there's a resolution that the Board of Finance recommends to the RTM an increase in the animal control fund budget for fiscal year 23 from $441,935 to $446,515. The increase will be funded through an appropriation from the general fund contingency account. Somebody want to move that?
I'll accept the resolution, Joe.
Okay, it's been moved by Jeff, seconded by
Charlie.
Charlie. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Thank you.
You're all set. Thank you both. Okay, now we're going to jump back to item number 3, which is to 3, 4, 5, and 6 are to hear presentation of the Andrew Group and GYL financial synergies with regards to the performance of the Town of Branford Pension Plan Fund for the quarter ended December 31st, 2022, and if necessary, rebalance the portfolio. We will then hear the same report with regards to the other post-employment benefits, and then the volunteer fire, and then the coastal resiliency fund. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you all very much for having us. Our
Okay.
apologies for being late. We're accustomed to the 7:30 meeting schedule, so Jim was kind enough to call us and let us know that we were late.
Okay, well, welcome. All right.
As customary, I'm going to give a little backdrop of the markets and economic activity for the reporting period ending December 31st, 2022, as well as some additional commentary for the beginning of 2023. Charlie's going to add in some additional detail and much more applicable commentary that's more real world than the data. And Michael will cover the experience of the various funds as we go through the reports. So as we all know, 2022 was a very difficult year from a returns perspective. When you look at the calendar year, equity returns and fixed income returns were negative, with the developed equity markets, the U.S. equity markets and developed international being down significantly. The U.S. markets being down about 18% and the international markets being down 14.5% to 15%. And fixed income markets, as we've talked about in the last few meetings, due to rising interest rates, had negative returns as well during 2022. So if you looked at, as people talk about the stock market and the average index there, in the bond market there's an index, as you're familiar with. That index, the aggregate bond market index, was down 13% for the year in 2022. So the year was very difficult. In the fourth quarter, we did receive a little bit of reprieve to soften that down period. Equities were up about 7.5% in the fourth quarter, and fixed income started to eke out a little bit of a positive return of about up 2% in the quarter. So that's a little bit of what happened in the fourth quarter. As you know, we've contended with meaningful issues with inflation, which was one of the big detractors to the performance of the various asset classes. In addition to that, the ongoing conflict in Russia and the Ukraine has added, heightened volatility and sensitivity in these markets. So and that was really the short version of last year. As we roll into this year, we have the markets modestly positive year to date, depending on the index you look at, but the U.S. market's up about 3.5%, and fixed income markets now showing a little bit of a positive return of about 2%. So since the end of last year, we've seen interest rates come down a little bit on longer duration bonds, while the Federal Reserve is still raising short-term interest rates. And we've seen equity markets behave a little, slightly better. And there's been a change in the leadership in the equity markets this year versus last year, where more of the quality growth businesses are demonstrating leadership for this year versus last year being led heavily by energy and financials. So as this year continues to set through, the inflation issues continue to be a worry, but now people are starting to talk about disinflation and what will that impact be. And then most recently, over the last several weeks, we've had a meaningful increase in volatility due to the banking issues that you've seen discussed very heavily in the media over the last several weeks, with multiple banks failing and other areas of distress throughout the banking system. And there's a lot of unknowns as to what that will be. There's very little that we know at this point in time. So we don't know what that impact will be economically. Will it be localized to those institutions, or is it broader? We do have a supposition that it will start to infringe upon credit standards, and it may start to slow down credit being delivered into the marketplace, which may slow down economic growth. So we may see economic growth slow as we go through 2022. And 2023, thank you. As we go through this current calendar year. And it would be difficult to postulate what 2024 economic growth would be with the lack of clarity of information at this point. Inflation has started to come down a bit, and we're hopeful that that starts to become more manageable across all spaces. So with that, I'm not going to go on too much about the fixed income markets because, as you've heard from me in the past, I can go on for a while. But it's definitely been a hot topic in the investment space as the bond market has been experiencing a lot more volatility than it normally does experience. And it's a function of the inflation issues, the banking issues, and a number of other dynamics. And that's, hopefully that leads us to a Federal Reserve that will now stabilize their interest rate policy and hopefully be at or near the top of their rising rate cycle. And that we will see in the months ahead. But we're paying very close attention to not just what the data is, but what the Fed governors say when they speak, because part of their job is to communicate to the market an expectation of what to expect their actions to be. And hopefully that will help manage volatility a bit better than we've experienced for the last several months. So with that, I'm going to switch over to Michael, have him take us through a bit of the experience of the fund. And then, as always, we're happy to take questions throughout.
Great. Thank you, Rob. And again, I think I own us being late. So I was actually just sitting. I was actually early because I was in Rhode Island earlier and was sitting in the Starbucks parking lot. So, but my apologies. In any event, if we could please turn to tab 1, page 19, we'll give the 35,000-foot overview that we usually do. And starting with on the top right, I just want to focus in on a couple of rows, starting with the annualized return. In the middle column on the right-hand side, where it says Town of Brantford Police Pension, that number of 5.21%, that's the annualized return going back to 4/1/03. That translates to a total return just below that of approximately 172%. That is very consistent with the underlying benchmark performance, exactly as you would imagine, since the portfolio is primarily passively invested. And the benchmark performance has been at 5.25 with a total return of just under 175%. The return has come with about 8% less volatility. That's indicated a few rows down in the beta figure at 0.92. Beta's on, as we've discussed in the past, is on a simple 100-point scale. That's a measure of volatility, so a number of 92 indicates there's been about 8% less volatility than that of the benchmark. That all coalesces into the alpha or value added, and in that we see it continues to be a positive number. So essentially for the return that we've received versus the risk that has been taken, there's been a small amount of excess return above and beyond that which would be expected. And again, because this portfolio is predominantly passive, that's come from a combination of the dollar cost averaging and the rebalancing, as well as the slightly higher credit quality to the fixed income portfolio. In dollars and cents, that comes on the bottom right of page 19. I was starting with a beginning value of $8.3 million on 4/1/03. Net cash flow, in other words, contributions minus withdrawals, has been positive to the tune of $465,000, and then the market has provided just over $18 million in earnings, bringing us to an ending value of $26.8 million at the end of December. Turning back a couple of pages, as Rob alluded to, on page 15, excuse me, as Rob alluded to, we had a positive experience during the fourth quarter, which helped to offset some of the declines we had during the first 3 quarters of the year, but not in their entirety. We're up 5.9% for the fourth quarter, In 2022, the total return was minus 12.13%. That is, of course, a number that's difficult to get excited about. However, when we do look at it in the context of the return of the broad fixed income market and the broad equity markets, the relatively conservative posture of this pension fund, compared to many of your peers, it actually performed quite well on a relative basis in 2022. Excuse me. The one bright spot to the performance in 2022 was the master limited partnerships, the oil and gas pipelines. That's really was about the only place other than cash where we saw positive returns in 2022. But on balance, performance consistent with the underlying benchmark. I do want to focus a little bit on fixed income and high yield. You can see. Again, may come as cold comfort to a certain extent because we're seeing negative numbers. However, you can see both your investment grade as well as your high yield or below investment grade fixed income outperformed its benchmark quite handily, owing to primarily to the relatively high credit quality of the portfolio. I do want to just touch on one additional page, which we don't usually focus on, but I think it is worth noting, and it's to kind of put in context that as difficult as the bond market has been, quite frankly, the experience that we had over the past year or so is part of the reason why the portfolio is structured the way it is. This pension and this Board of Finance has long taken a view of doing some immunization of liabilities, and that has really helped to buffer the downside volatility. And I want to just chat a little bit about the bond market and the price of the individual bonds and how it varies relative to their maturity value, because I think it's important to note that you own the individual bonds within the pension fund. And so although we've seen the value come down as interest rates have gone up, because the duration of your liabilities exceeds the duration of your bond portfolio, in the longer run, as those bonds mature at their par value, that will give an opportunity to reinvest at higher rates. And so I just wanted to kind of touch on, if you note on page 15, the value of the fixed income, of the core fixed income, was about $9.4 million at the end of the year. However, if we turn and look at the actual bond portfolio, which comes after page 23, and there's no pagination on those page numbers, but if you look at the last page of the spreadsheets with the bond issues on it, you'll see that the par value of the bond portfolio is just over $10 million. And so the point to take is that that certainly doesn't make 2022 feel any better, and it doesn't change the fact that we've seen a downward pressure in the price of the fixed income portfolio. But it is worth noting that because of the way the bond portfolio is structured versus the liabilities, and because you own the individual bonds, this will become sort of a transient event, if you will, as those bonds eventually accrete towards their par value. Just touching on rebalancing, the value of the portfolio as of Friday was $26,707,000. Myself, Rob, Charlie, and Mr. Finch, the finance director, reviewed this as we always do prior to this meeting, and our recommendation is to raise some cash. We have to raise about $900,000. Raise about $725,000 in cash to bring us back to our target of approximately $900,000. That is very closely dovetails with the July contributions that are typically made, and so the recommendation is to raise about $343,000 from fixed income and about $381,000 from equities to replenish the cash for the next several months for pension payments, with the anticipation of, as it has historically, that the town will make a contribution during the month of July.
Mr. Chairman,
Okay, yes, Harry?
in July, when you got the cash, it's all invested in the last 6 months? Did you hold back a percentage of cash? Because now you're raising cash.
Every time when the contribution comes in, we hold the cash and have a discussion with Mr. Finch and then a presentation to the board. So in August, we would have made a recommendation.
So I'll ask Jim.
Yes.
So what you're asking is, let's just say next year we put in roughly $1.4 million, which is closely resembles your budget. You're asking, do we keep $700,000 of that in cash for the first 6 months? No, typically what we do is we'll rebalance the policy. And so, they'll keep cash for probably 4 or 5 months. The idea is that, over time, by having the money invested, you're going to do better in cash. And then historically, we've actually issued instructions to our custodian when we need to raise cash. That's typically what we've done.
Okay, other questions on that? You're asking us to rebalance, to vote on this rebalancing, which is approximately 380,000, or is that the 725, is that you're moving around?
It's the
here?
725, it's the 381 in the
And-
bold,
and
and
the
then the 343 in the
343.
bold.
Okay. So moving into cash, right?
Correct.
Moving into cash out of those investments in order to adjust for not only for policy, but also to anticipate the future cash needs.
Correct.
Somebody want to move that, or
I'll move it, Joe.
moved by Jeff,
I'll second it.
seconded by Victor? Any questions? The only question I had was that, somewhat related, was, so we were down 12.54 for the year, correct?
Correct.
Yes, sir.
And I know it's not a lot of comfort, but that's compared to the policy where we did better than the, actually, we did 12.13, and the policy was 12.54.
12.54,
So we actually beat the policy
Thank you.
by that small amount. Comparatively, we as to others in the market, others with similar plans.
Compared to others in the market, I would say on balance, you outperformed most of your peers for the simple reason that you tend to have a lower equity allocation, and you also have a higher credit quality in the fixed income portfolio. So, I haven't seen any kind of industry-wide statistics, but I would say in our experience on balance, municipal pension plans, at least based on the assortment that I've seen, were typically down around 15 to 16% last year. Obviously, it varies depending upon your relative allocations, but the relatively conservative tilt to the Brantford pension served you well versus many of your peers, certainly.
To add to that a little bit more, and it's actually referenced in the commentary in the earlier pages in the report, if you just look at the broad market indexes of a broadly diversified equity portfolio that's indexed, balanced at 60% equities and 40% in fixed income, that portfolio would have been down approximately 16% for 2022. So to give you it's not a complete comparison, but a reference point. And that's to the point of a little bit less exposure to equities, being slightly more conservative there versus a number of your peers, as well as having the quality constraints in fixed income. This is the environment where those matter. And the conversation 2 years ago when the markets were strong and interest rates were zero, people were wondering, why aren't we 80% in stocks? Well, this is why.
All right, thanks, Rob. The other question I had, when you referenced the par value of the fixed income side versus the market value, but if we hold these to maturity, which we say we would, then we would not have the losses, which are not reflected in this market value. So that's another thing to consider.
If you were to liquidate today, the market value
would be value
is
that
accurate.
right, but our duration or we're holding to maturity on these. That's the plan, or a shorter duration.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to imply that they'll definitely be held to maturity because there are other tools that your bond manager uses to try and add value, but I think the The point I was trying to make is that we're looking at a snapshot of the market at a period in time, whereas the underlying par value of the bonds is greater. And since your bond portfolio is structured to offset the first several years of pension payments, this is really kind of, to echo what Rob said about, why we have the asset allocation that we have. This is why that we do that with the bond portfolio as well.
And it works,
Yep.
so. Okay, other discussion on this? Jim, you want-
Yeah, the other thing I just want to highlight, one of the points they made is, so when those bonds come due at par, what they're basically saying is you get a second bite of the apple, because then you reinvest them at higher rates and still be within, let's say, the 6-year immunization period.
Yeah.
So you get
Yeah.
that step up almost like.
The policy works.
Yeah.
And the strategy works. No other discussion? Motion was made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. We'll move on to the,
We're going to move into the next tab, which should be the fire incentive plan.
okay.
And Michael's going to want you to turn to page 19 in this deck, and then I'll have Michael take over there as he gets there.
Thank you, Rob.
You're welcome.
So we are, so we'll take a quick look, a much shorter discussion with regards to the volunteer fire plan, owing to the fact that it's got a very similar asset allocation, although the bonds are in an index fund, because of the sheer size of the mandate, it's not efficient to purchase individual bonds. But we can again take a look at that we've gotten the majority of the upside in the market. We've averaged 4.42% versus the benchmark at 4.73. That's come with about 7% less risk. And so our alpha in this case essentially is flat. And what that means is that the performance has been consistent with, not ahead, not behind, but consistent with the risk metric, which is not really that unusual, just because of the nature of the portfolio, because this is 100% passive. You would expect it over time to perform consistent with the underlying benchmark. In dollars and cents, going back to 12/1 of 15, beginning market value was $56,000. That's just sort of an artifact of where of the timing of the transfers. And similarly with the cash flow, because this was funded from the police pension back in 2015 when they were split into separate asset pools, and earnings of $311,000, bringing us to $1.44 million as of the end of the year. As of Friday's close, the value was $1,459,000. We are very close to policy. And have plenty of cash, don't need to raise any cash for benefit payments, so we do not recommend any rebalancing to the fire plan today.
Thanks, Rob. Any questions on this, for the fire incentive plan? Okay, next.
So moving into the third tab, which is going to be should be the OPEC Trust.
Okay.
It's actually,
Is that correct, Michael?
I have them in a different order than you, but that's okay.
That's okay.
I
We
can
know.
bounce around.
it's the one above it.
Oh, so, I'm sorry, so if we can go to, which one do you want to go to, Michael?
I think, no, it sounds like everyone's on OPEC, right?
Yeah, we're on OPEB page 19, right?
Okay, yes, please.
Yes, page 19, page 20.
Yeah, thanks, Rob.
So again, with the OPEB, we've had a return of 4.67%, consistent with but slightly behind the benchmark at 4.8%. That owes to the relative overweight to cash in the OPEB. And we can see that the low beta or volatility quotient is also because of the overweight to cash. It's experienced about 14% less volatility than that of the benchmark, and that brings our alpha to a positive number of 0.04. In dollars and cents, back on 7/1 of 2011, rather, we had a $4 million balance in the OPEB. Since that time, $24.9 million in inflows and $6.64 million in earnings, bringing us to $35,580,000. Moving back a couple of pages to performance. You'll note that the relative performance of the OPEB, although for the trailing 1 year, slightly behind that of the benchmark, the absolute number because of the large cash position that had been subsequently invested in short-term treasury bills, where we're getting some yield on that, on those cash alternatives. So the return for the OPEB for 2022 was minus 7.2%. For the fourth quarter, rather, the return was 4.23%. As I mentioned, slightly behind the benchmark, which was 4.79 for the 3-month, and minus 6.79 for the trailing 1 year. You'll notice, just to focus on one item, if we go towards the bottom of page 15, you'll notice about 4 rows up from the bottom, $10.3 million in treasury bills. That is the money that was invested last, I think it was in the spring of last year, was it?
August of last year.
August of last year, in the summer of last year. Those dollars were deployed in T-bills, and they are maturing consistent with the semi-annual dollar cost averaging. And so on that same theme, the value of the OPEB as of Friday's close was, of the invested assets, was $26.6 million. Of the total assets were just under $36 million, $35,988. And that includes that cash position, and we are also spot on with the investment policy, and so there's no recommendation to rebalance the OPEB this evening.
Okay, questions on this? If not, we'll go to Coastal Resiliency Fund, the last tab.
Thank you. And moving on to Coastal Resiliency. Coastal Resiliency, of course, a much shorter history, combined with stringent state of Connecticut regulations or as to how the dollars can be invested. But starting in tab 3 on page 17, we'll note, unfortunately, in the short history of the Coastal Resiliency, at a time when both equities and fixed income were negative, that the inception return from October of 2021 is negative at this point, is annualizing at minus 6.46. The silver lining to that is slightly ahead of its benchmark, or actually more than a full percentage point ahead of its benchmark, which was minus 7.51. And that has come with about 15% less volatility than that of the underlying benchmark. Turning back to page 15, we can see again, this all sort of comes as cold comfort, but for the trailing 1 year, as well as the since inception number, excess performance versus that of the benchmark, but at this point, the returns are negative across the board. We're minus 9.7 versus minus 11% in the trailing 1 year, and since inception in October of 21, minus 6.46% versus the benchmark, which was minus 7.51. Again, you do have a government portfolio, and you do have a portfolio of individual bonds. The par value of those bonds, $1.239 million, versus the market value at $1.18 million. So again, a little bit of, the bonds are trading at a discount now, but the anticipation is that they'll be held closer to maturity, and will start to amortize back to the maturity value. The value of the Coastal Resiliency Fund has come up, and there's been a deposit made since the end of the year, and so the value is $2,022,000, and we are right on target with our policy, so no rebalancing recommendation this evening for the Coastal Resiliency.
Okay. Thank you on that. Are there other questions of this illustrious group here? With none, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Good night.
Have a good night.
Okay, now we will move back to item number 12, which is to consider and if appropriate approve the following fiscal 23 budget transfer request for Human Services Fund and Counseling Center as follows. And it is a request to move out of fund balance, $64,000, to accommodate the electric vehicle and furniture. We have a letter from Mr. Finch. with regards to this request. And this is actually as an advance of our budget workshop, which is further on in the agenda, which moves two of the requests that were slated for fiscal '24 into the current year and to allocate those out of the fund balance that's within the Human Services Fund. Jim?
Yeah.
Anything else on that?
Yeah, I mean, you covered it very well. I mean, there's 64,000 coming out of the Human Services Fund balance, and then it's for the electric vehicle and the furniture. The amounts in this request are a little bit higher than what was in the requested budget to account for variations in pricing, which has been a constant theme in just about every budget presentation. So there is two transfers for item 12 and a resolution.
Okay, so I'm going to read these resolutions. The first one is to increase transfer from the within Fund 709, from fund balance 64,000, and transfer out to capital fund 64,000, and the relating transfer would be within 700. For transfer in of 64,000, and then an authorization to expend 45,000 on the electric vehicle and 19,000 on the furniture for a total of 64,000. So I'll take those two transfers in one shot.
I'll move it, Joe.
Moved by Jeff,
I'll second it.
seconded by Charlie. Is there discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
And then the corresponding adjustment to the overall budget, which is resolved that the Board of Finance recommends to the RTM, increasing the Human Services Fund budget for fiscal '23 from $1,813,938 to $1,877,938. This increase will be funded through an appropriation from fund balance. Moved by Victor,
Second.
seconded by Jeff. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next is item number 13, which is to consider and if appropriate approve the following transfer in the current year to reduce tax requirements in fiscal '24 requested budget. And it's twofold. So we'll take the first one, which is multiple folds, but first one is to transfer from contingency $39,500 to technology acquisitions copier, which were presented by Deborah, and the IT budget from the municipal side. Any questions on that?
I'll move it.
Moved by Victor,
Second.
seconded by Pam. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Secondly is the request from the Board of Ed, which was for $646,000, which was for integrated security system. And we may have some questions on that, so if Hamlet and Don want to come up to this, on this one, please. And we did receive tonight information on this, and I don't know if the board has not had a chance, unfortunately, the board has not had a chance to absorb this, but this was provided to Jim this evening that gives a detailed breakdown of the $645,928.44, which is rounded up to $646,000. Welcome, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Rob, do you want to go over this for us, unless Hamlet has some introductory remarks?
I just want to make sure this is on, Joe, I'm sorry. First of all, thank you for entertaining this. I know that we had some questions. I believe it was last Thursday night. We do apologize that we were unable to get the documents to you earlier. But this evening, certainly we are prepared to provide, to go over the proposal. Rob can go over the numbers, and we're ready to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you.
It's,
So this is, my understanding, Rob, that this was based on state contract,
Yes, it is.
and who's the vendor on this?
CDWG and Government Connection, which are both state contract vendors.
CDW and who else?
Gov Connection.
Gov Connection?
The Gov Connection handles the alarm portion, and CDWG covers the rest of the items, the cameras and so forth. And then the last part is also the installer, Northeastern. They're also on the state contract.
Who else is the third one?
The installer contractor?
Is who?
Northeastern.
Northeastern, that's just the name of it, Northeastern?
Yeah, it's the electrical communications contractor.
Oh, it's
North, it looks like, yeah, Northeastern Electric that's the 50,728, I think, at the bottom of this
okay,
chart.
thanks. Okay. So you want to walk through this with us, Rob, for?
yeah, we was just pulling it up right now, and he did not.
It's actually-
You have it? Yep.
So this includes, this is a cloud-based system which includes security alarms, door access control, badges, security cameras, sign-in, environmental sensors, the whole 9 yards for all schools, all buildings,
Yes,
including Indian Neck?
yes.
Okay. And what else can you tell us about it?
So it's an integrated system, which I explained before, and the beauty of the system that it pulls together all our different parts under one umbrella so that we can access and control and manage all of these systems. Most important is just how it enhances our response in crisis times, gives us a proactive system, which also helps us to be more aware of what's going on. For example, if cameras go offline, it notifies us. That's one of the typical problems in many security systems is you'll hear stories of, well, we didn't know the camera wasn't working. And so if our current system, for example, doesn't notify us when a camera's offline, and this system would do that. So it's proactive. It gives us events like a door prop, which is very important if somebody sticks something in a door or doors open and so forth. So it helps security staff and others be more responsive to things. It provides us with guest badging, which allows when people arrive at school to sign in and get reference to a federal sex offender database. The system, the equipment carries a 10-year warranty on the actual cameras and so forth. It's a cloud-based system, which really long-term enables us to reduce servers and the work hours and maintenance that goes into that. So in the long term, it'll be more efficient and more sustainable. It's software-based, which means it's constantly updated. It's not necessarily mechanically updated. So the software is what drives the operation, the viewing, and so forth. And last time you were asking, like, where is it located or so forth, it is a cloud-based system, which means when we access the system, we could do it from anything that's internet connected, which gives us way more flexibility in whether it's a laptop or an iPad or a mobile phone, for example. You can control the system like lock, unlock doors, see what's happening in a situation. Our security personnel are given iPads, so as they walk the building, they could also still see the system and not necessarily be anchored at the traditional thing that you might picture, a room with computer monitors with people just sitting. It really does free our people to walk around and be. And that's kind of highlights the system itself. Included there is the breakdown, the alarm hubs and so forth. Those are the elements that are installed in the school that really trigger our alarm and it also includes monitoring, alarm monitoring. and there's licensing that goes along with that. And then we have a variety of different types of cameras that help us really cover the system, from regular dome cameras to wide-angle fisheye cameras, bullet cameras that really target on a specific area like a driveway, and then some multi-purpose cameras also. There's sensors for air quality that monitor a wide variety of air issues, from temperature to noise to TVOX, which are chemicals in the air, and so forth. And then, just some of the other items that are listed there are mounting brackets and pendant caps and other things that go into installing and putting the cameras in a replacement. And then, of course, the Northeastern Electric is the install on the items as well.
So the license is, that $119,000 is the 3-year license?
Yep, for 3 years, and it covers all the cameras, so that that's the accessing, the cloud service, and the alarm monitoring is kind of connected in with that license.
Where's the support on this? There's support in here?
The support's included.
And
that's part of that 10-year warranty and included support. That's one of the other benefits of the system. Their support has been outstanding. Local, you pick up the phone and you have somebody very quickly.
Yeah. So who's in charge of this at the board level?
John, I just want to make sure I understand your question. The technology department has oversight of actually implementing this. The way that we integrate this is building principles are tuned into this. So it's a building base while integrated. It can be centralized so that Rob can see it, I can see it if need be. But on a daily basis, it's the building principal working with their security folks.
Okay. So IT owns the operation of it?
That is correct.
And the actual
Utilization.
day-to-day utilization is by the particular person who's in charge of that building? Okay. Questions from the board on this? Charlie?
Just having to do with guest sign-in and a badge, I mean, are there any background checks immediately done?
Yes. So when someone signs in, that's what it references,
No,
a
this is the
federal
crime act,
database.
Okay, so somebody is actually watching to see this person sign in, where they live, and then they send a request in?
So there's an iPad placed at the door, and the person puts in the information, scans their photo ID into the system. The ID doesn't get saved in the system, but it just takes the information off, references the database, and then presents the person at the door, the receptionist, with information as to who's standing there. And they just make a visual connection as who's standing there versus what they say, who they say they are, and then in they come.
We also could put into the system, we can also put controls if there's any restriction in someone picking up a particular child. We can put that into the system.
Yeah,
so that flags that.
Yeah, there's cases where somebody might not be allowed to pick up a particular child, and they could be entered in the system as well. And if they come in and go through the same process, it'll come up referencing our own list of people.
So the receptionist is comfortable, like if something came up, like registered sex offender, the receptionist makes the call whether the person could come in or not, or does she tell security, or?
Security is right there. In many instances, security is co-located. If you go into our buildings, you'll see that all of our buildings have a double foyer. So the person doesn't have access into the building. So the building principal is alerted, security is alerted, and then that, just because someone is on the sex offender piece, they may still have access, parental rights. So those situations, the building principal will get involved, as well as the school security. But what we want to do is slow everything down, tamp everything down, and be made aware of who's going into our building or who's not allowed to go into our building.
Right.
But if you go into the buildings, you'll see those. They're commonly referred to as man traps. That's what people refer them to. But it's a double door foyer.
Got it.
Okay. And the time to implement this?
It's from start. It's hard to say the exact time, but we would love to have it all installed before the start of school.
So it's,
If it was approved and we could start on it now, then
right.
that would be great.
So you think 30, 60 days to actually from approval?
Yeah, once it's ordered, we call the installation company, schedule when they can start to put things in. Inventory, we'll call CDWG, and they'll ship the items out, and then it's just one-to-one replacement, and as the vendor goes around, placing the cameras and continuing all about the system, so.
Okay. Charlie?
Do you do any form of guest sign-in now, an identification?
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, is there a guest write-in ledger or something like that?
Yes.
Each school has one?
Yes.
Victor?
I've noticed a lot of long lead times on materials. Do they really have this material in stock?
Yes.
They do, okay.
Jim, you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to emphasize, when asking about the lead time, that was one of the conversations that I had with Don and Rob, because, other districts across the country are in the consortium, would most likely be doing this over the summer. And so if we can get a jump on that, the crews may be a little bit slower as opposed to everybody going full out in the summer. So that was another advantage of doing it this way. Obviously, we were motivated by budget savings, but one of the other benefits was being able to start sooner. And if there is, to your point, Victor, despite all best assurances that things will be delivered on time, by starting, let's just say, in April or May to the start of school, it does give a little bit of margin against unexpected delays and possibly installation. They may run into something that needs something else. So it helps us by giving us more time. And
Sure, thank you. Jamie?
You mentioned it's cloud-based. Would dispatch and town dispatch and police and fire personnel have access to this, or is it limited to Board of Dispatch?
It's IP-based, Jamie, so we can pretty much, on the flip of a switch, if there's an incident that the police and fire need to have access to it, we would be able to literally do it instantaneously. They don't have access 24/7. For example, just recently, there was something that occurred on Brushy Plains Road, just outside the school. The police contacted us, we shared information. That was post-incident. Real incident, they call us up, we give them access, so that they can see it immediately if they need to look.
And this is tied in, you mentioned the alarms now, because that's what, I was thinking, if an alarm was triggered outside of a school being occupied, would they be able, whether it's fire or a door opening, but it would be granted on a case-by-case section.
You want to answer that, Russ?
Right, so the fire would stay separate, so this is more of the security monitoring, and then the company would contact police directly, and they could provide links and send, here's a link to the video footage, and they could stay online with the person and tell them exactly what they're watching and seeing at that time. Right.
Thanks.
So that'll be part of the implementation, the testing to those connections will be tested as well?
Yes.
Okay. And, other questions? Questions from the board? Okay, so I'm going to read proposed transfer, which would be transfer from fund balance, $646,000, into transfer out of $646,000, and then a transfer in within Fund 700, 646 transfer in, and the authorization to spend $646,000 BOE security system. I'll take that as a.
I'll move it, Joe.
I'll second it.
Been moved and seconded. Is there additional discussion or questions from the board? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Next would be to, this resolution, resolve that the Board of Finance recommends to the RTM an appropriation from undesignated fund balance of $646,000 to fund an appropriation for a school security system. The appropriation increases the fiscal year general fund budget for fiscal '23 from $124,821,065 to $125,467,065. I will entertain that resolution.
I'll move that resolution.
Been moved by Victor,
I'll second.
seconded by Pam. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, gentlemen, thank you. And next, in conjunction with that, there is an additional suggestion from the finance director to, again, with the concept of funding things in this current year, or instead of putting them into fiscal '24, is with regards to the $100,000 for the cattle crossing, Meadow Street design and permitting, which was presented by the town engineer, which is also featured in the Branford 2018 Coastal Resiliency Plan. So that $100,000, I will entertain a motion that increases fund transfer from fund balance of $100,000 to the authorization to spend of cattle crossing design and permitting, $100,000.
I'll move it, Joe.
Moved by Jeff,
I'll second.
seconded by Charlie. Our discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
And next would be resolved that the Board of Finance recommends to the RTM an appropriation of $100,000 for the Coastal Resiliency Fund. This appropriation will be funded through an appropriation from fund balance.
I'll move it, Joe.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next on the agenda is to consider the ARPA dollars and the administration of those funds. And the agenda item is pursuant to Section 4-42-1 of the Code of the Town of Branford, provide a financial obligation review of the Branford Community Foundation's scope of services and costs regarding the application process for distributing ARPA dollars to area nonprofits. And Jim has sent us a letter, which, again, we had actually asked the administration, the First Selectman's Office, and the Finance Office back some time ago to look at the allocation of and the administration of the ARPA dollars that we had put aside, $425,000 for nonprofits. And they've since then had some discussions with the foundation, and that has precipitated the letter from Jim with Jamie's approval with regards to the Branford Community Foundation administering those ARPA dollars. Jim, you want to touch on that a little bit more?
Yeah, just by way of background, the town of Branford received $8,257,000 and change for ARPA. This board discussed how we might allocate that. We elected the standard allowance, which basically allows us to fund government services. And then looking at our budget, we recognize that we may want to do something in the area of human needs, in addition to our own Branford Counseling Center. And so some of the things that we heard was that, well, what's a framework for allocating that? Recognizing that, the vast majority of government services occur in the general fund, and this would be something new that we hadn't done on this scale. The Board of Finance in a meeting estimated somewhere in the area of 5%, which was, which then we increased it a little bit more. to the 525, recognizing there may be some other administrative costs. From that point, we got some feedback from the board in terms of allocating these dollars. We talked about what other communities are doing, and the message that I took away from those conversations was that find a distribution channel. However, that channel wouldn't act on its own, that those requests or recommendations would come back to the board. So in other words, part of the distribution is that we find an organization to do the screening, the application development, and then make recommendations to us, and then we would actually act on those recommendations, we meaning the Board of Finance and the RTM, and then we, meaning the Finance Department, would cut checks to these organizations. So that was what we heard from those conversations, and that was what we took away. And we had multiple conversations over a period of probably 18 months with the Brantford Community Foundation. Unfortunately, the executive director of the Community Foundation is out of town dealing with a family issue on the other coast. And so what we did is we communicated to the foundation what we were looking for, which is a little bit different than what they're doing, say, in our neighbor to the east in Guilford. But it was something that, you know, they felt they could work with, and it met the needs that we wanted. And that is, again, I'll emphasize it again, is that they would be making recommendations and the town would be approving those contributions. So, you know, they estimated that the cost would be somewhere between $21,250 and $38,250. And again, it would only be based on what their costs are. And, you know, if they had to bring additional resources as needed, then that would be part of this, and that's factored into this. The letter I sent you and the copy of the proposal gives you a scope of services. You know, the other aspect of this is, well, is that Section 4210, which you've acted on tonight as it related to the payroll system, I'm sorry, 42.1 rather, says that any obligation over 10,000 or multiple years, we don't envision all of this money going out, you know, in the next couple months, so we envision it will occur multiple years. So in an abundance of caution, we followed the ordinance and came to the Board of Finance asking the board to act on that. And so that's essentially sort of the journey we've been on. And you know, the Brantford Community Foundation, in my time in Brantford, I'm not an expert on the Community Foundation, but I've generally heard good things about them. They seem to be a trusted source who has experience dealing with nonprofits in the Brantford community. So I think it's fair to say that, you know, they come well recommended. Our neighbor to the east is using them with a much greater dollar allocation, and Guilford is actually allowing the Community Foundation to make the contributions. So Guilford isn't voting on any other additional recommendations, but that's the beauty of local government. You know, you have to sort of every town has their own sort of flavor, and every town has their own way of doing things, and you know, what works for Guilford doesn't work for Brantford, and vice versa. So, but they're flexible, and they were flexible about assisting us in this way. So I think on the surface of it and with discussions, it's consistent with the way we filed. It's consistent with the way we're allocating money to nonprofits, and so we would recommend that you act on this.
Okay, thanks, Jim. Questions from Jim on this? Victor?
Is there a deadline that's when these funds have to be distributed?
Well, in ARPA in general, for our requirements, they have to be basically appropriated by December 24 and spent by 26. So,
Okay.
and now remember, here is we're the ones that are cutting the checks, so that's kind of on us. What was an interesting question is if we had given the money to the Community Foundation, in other words, had we cut the check to the Community Foundation, would that count as being spent for our purposes? So, you know, these are things that we do our first filing, well, really our second filing, but we didn't have any project. April 30th. So maybe we'll learn a little bit more, but that's like one of the nuances of the way we're doing it versus say another place.
Thank you.
Other questions, Charlie?
Hey, Jim, so the foundation makes a recommendation to your Board of Finance, right? We forward it on to the Board of Selectmen, right, and they decide.
No, actually, it would, oh, sorry.
It would go
Oh, the
to
RTM?
the RTM.
Yeah, so basically, think of it this way, Charlie. So the way we built the framework for handling ARPA appropriations, ideally you want public input, right? And so last year, all of us collectively decided that the best way to kind of do that in a format that everybody's familiar with is to essentially follow the budget process. And so, so we've opted to go that route. It wasn't necessarily required, but it made sense for us because the Board of Finance recommends to the RTM and the RTM acts on it. This would be the same thing. So instead of a department coming to you with requests to fund nonprofits, we're using an outside agent acting on our behalf to do it. And then that process would follow along exactly as the way it currently works on other items.
Okay, other questions? Not then, I will resolve that the pursuant to section 42-1 of the Code of the Town of Brantford, the Board of Finance recommends that the Board of Selectmen approve an agreement with the Brantford Community Foundation to assist the town in distributing the ARPA dollars.
I'll move that resolution.
I'll second it.
Made, seconded by Jeff. Is there discussion? Additional questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Joe could abstain.
And we have an abstention from Pam. Thank you, Pam. Next is, what's next? Item number 15.
The budget.
Fiscal 23-24 budget work session. It says click here. What does that mean?
What's that?
Click here for the budget as requested. That's pretty good. So this is the last agenda item, and we will be, as we refer in the past, cutting the budget and budget requests, and then sending a budget to the RTM for their consideration. So as an overview, we have been requested a total of $135,173,946, or an increase of $10,352,881. And that would have represented a mill rate of 31.27, with an 8.3% increase in expenditures and a 6.1% increase in the mill rate. Based on the public hearings and other deliberations and meetings that the individuals have had, departments have presented information, the board is prepared tonight to walk through the budget line items and make recommendations to the RTM. As in the past, we'll start with the Board of Ed. And so the request for the Board of Ed was $64,477,616 for the operating budget. There's a recommendation that we approve $62,911,644. Would be an increase of $1,005,000. Is that correct, Jim? I mean, $1,565,972, which would be a 3.25% increase on the operating budget. There's been some consideration with regards to the partnership, and other expenses that the Board of Ed may have or may incur. We believe that this is a fair allocation. Other comments on this or questions with regards to this budget?
Yeah, I just want to note that the cut was $1,565,972. The increase was $1,982,070.
All right, so that's the column that I need to be looking at here.
Yeah.
Thank you. So the 3.25% increase would be an increase of $1,980,270. Is there a discussion among the Board of Finance on this? Comments? Somebody want to move it?
I'll move.
Moved by Victor,
Second.
seconded by Pam. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And we will take a look at the Board of Ed capital. Again, we do have handouts to help us through this multiple levels of paperwork. With regards to the security, I'm looking at the summary here, and if we want to look at the detail, we can. Security camera of $10,000. There's an integrated security system, which we funded with other means. The $50,000 for school technology is being recommended. The $10,000 for computers is recommended. The $420,000 of lease is recommended. The $18,000 for equipment facilities is recommended. The $80,000 for replaced classroom heaters is recommended. The $35,000 for the boiler in Indian Neck School is recommended. The interior painting is recommended. And there's an allocation of the general funds or other funds. The $95,000 for the seal coating is recommended, again, out of general fund. Parking lot seal coating at Tisco and Murphy for $95,000 each is recommended. $15,000 for building code, and the $89.25 for door wide replacement, as well as the sidewalk repair. So that total, in total, is $1,522,854. Essentially no reductions in the capital requests. And so we'll vote on these individually after the fact, Jim, on this capital budget.
Well, if you want to, you could vote on this one. I think it'll.
Or, what's that? We probably should do a separate vote on this.
Yeah.
So I'll entertain a motion on this $1,522,000 from various sources, which includes $456,000 for general fund capital, the lease fund of $420,000. We've dealt with this $646,000. So that I'll entertain a motion to that effect on the capital items.
I'll move the motion, Joe.
Moved by Harry, seconded by Jeff. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. Next, we'll go to the top, and we're going to start with the other departments. And what I'm going to do this year, instead of flipping through every page that we've done historically, I'm going to use the budget summary sheet that has been prepared for tonight. And if we have a change or we want to look at an individual budget, we can do that. So that is I'll wait till everybody has their pages in order here.
Yeah, is there one?
There's one, that's this one here.
Yeah, I'm looking for it.
That's okay, I think it's the bottom one there, Charlie. Yeah, there it is. Okay, so and then we'll use this capital here after that, okay? So we'll take our time. I think this will be a little less flipping through the budget book.
Okay.
So for legislative, the recommendation is recommended, which is $18,766.
I'll move that.
Moved by Charlie,
I'll second.
seconded by Jeff. Is there discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next is executive, no change, $330,091.
Move it.
Moved by Charlie, seconded by
Harry.
Victor. By Harry, thank you. Discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Next is finance, $105,676, no change.
Move it.
Second.
Moved and seconded by Jeff. Discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Fiscal services, $549,690, no change.
I'll move
Move
that.
it.
Moved by Victor, seconded by Charlie.
Okay.
Discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Next is assessor, $494,271, no change.
Move it.
Moved by Charlie.
Second.
Seconded by Harry. Discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Next is Board of Tax Review, $14,625, no change.
Move it.
Moved by Harry,
Second.
seconded by Jeff. Discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Next is Town Tax Collector, $761,377, no change.
I'll move it.
Moved by Harry,
Second.
seconded by Victor. Is there discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next is Town Clerk, $277,271, no change.
I'll move it.
Moved by Jeff.
Second.
Seconded by Pam. Is there discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next is Legal Services, $450,000, no change.
I'll move it.
Moved by Charlie.
Second.
Seconded by Victor. Is there discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next is Labor Relations, $93,600, no change.
Move it.
Moved by Harry.
Second.
Seconded by Pam. Is there discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Next is Probate Court, $17,290, no change.
I'll move it.
Moved by Jeff.
Second.
Seconded by Charlie. Is there discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Next is Elections, $220,349, no change.
I'll move it.
Moved by Victor.
Second.
Seconded by Pam. Is there discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next is Planning and Zoning, $345,313, no change.
I'll move it.
Moved by Jeff.
Second.
Seconded by Harry. Is there discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
ZBA, Zoning Board of Appeals, $10,838, no change.
I'll move it.
Second.
Moved and seconded by Harry. Is there discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Economic Development, $23,550, no change.
I'll move it.
Been moved by Harry,
Second.
seconded by Jeff. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Next is Inland Wetlands, $143,683, no change.
I'll move it.
Been moved by Pam,
Second.
seconded by Jeff. Is there discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next is Municipal Government Buildings. We're recommending a reduction of $22,000 from their request to reduce purchase services, repair, and maintenance on page 27 by $22,000. That would reduce that proposed $381,669 down to $359,669. And we feel that we can accommodate that reduction. So that number would be $1,141,013 for that budget.
I'll move that.
Second it.
Then moved and seconded. Is there discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Cable TV, $15,600, no change.
Move it.
Moved by
Second.
Jeff, seconded by Pam.
Yep.
Is there discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next is IT, Information Technology, suggesting a reduction of $35,302 for technology acquisitions. Those are represented some of the funding that we approved in this current fiscal year. So that would
That's the copiers.
be, yes, we did approve that previously in the agenda, so that reduced amount request would be $1,143,040.
I'll move it.
Second.
Been moved and seconded by Charlie. Is there discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next is Human Resources, $345,328, no change.
Move it.
Been moved by Victor.
Second.
Seconded by Harry. Is there discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
The next page is Police Services. Request is $7,206,862, no change recommended.
Move it.
Second.
Been moved by Charlie, seconded by Pam. Pam, is there discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next is Special Detail, $525,000, no change.
I'll move it.
Moved by Victor,
Second.
seconded by Charlie. Is there discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Next is Department of Emergency Management, $30,500, no change.
I'll move it.
Moved by Jeff,
Second.
seconded by Pam. Is there discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next is Fire Protection, $7,405,496, no change recommended.
I'll move it.
Moved by Victor,
Second.
seconded by Harry. Is there discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next is Building Inspection and Enforcement, $226,278, no recommended change.
I'll move it.
Moved by Jeff,
Second.
seconded by Pam. Is there discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next is Other Protection, Animal Control, transfer out, $199,956, no change recommended.
I'll move it, Joe.
Moved by Jeff,
Second?
seconded by Victor. Is there discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next is Public Works, $2,705,486 is the recommended amount, which represents a slight reduction of $16,781. Other purchases, services reduced by $8,781, which is, would reduce that budget down to $100,000. And the drainage account would be reduced by $8,000 down to $85,000, for a total reduction in that request of $16,781, again with a total budget of recommended of $2,705,486.
I'll move that.
Moved by Victor,
I'll second it.
seconded by Jeff. Is there discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next is Water Pollution Control, transfer out of $600,000, no recommended changes.
Move it.
Joe.
Been moved by Charlie,
Second.
seconded by Jeff. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next is Solid Waste Management and Recycle, $4,793,358, no recommended changes.
Move it.
Second?
Been moved by Jeff, seconded by Victor. Is there discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next is Engineering, $466,162, no recommended changes.
Move it.
Moved by Pam,
Second?
seconded by Victor. Is there discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next is Human Services, $1,254,999, no recommended changes.
I'll move it.
Second.
Been moved and moved by Jeff, seconded by Charlie. Is there discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next is Commission on Elderly, $452,517, no recommended changes.
I'll move that.
I'll second it.
Been moved by Victor, seconded by Jeff. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next is East Shore Health, $383,001, no recommended changes.
I'll move it, Joe.
Second.
Moved by Jeff, seconded by Pam. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next is Recreation Department, $1,271,891. No recommended changes.
I'll move it.
Second?
Moved by Jeff, seconded by Victor. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next is Parks and Open Space, $26,800. No recommended changes.
I'll move it.
Moved by Jeff.
Second.
Seconded by Pam. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next is Docks and Recreation Facilities, $21,571. No recommended changes.
I'll move it.
Moved by Victor,
Second.
second by Charlie. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next is Public Celebration, $46,276, recommending a $10,000 increase on the fireworks line item to accommodate the additional expense anticipated. So that budget recommended would be $46,276.
I'll move that.
Moved by Victor,
Second?
seconded by Harry. Is there a discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next is Conservation Commission, $11,731. No recommended changes.
I'll move it, Joe.
Moved by Jeff,
Second.
second by Pam. Is there discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next is Blackstone Library, $1,700,340. No recommended changes.
I'll move that.
Moved by Victor,
I'll second it.
seconded by Jeff. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next is Willoughby Wallace Library, $269,741. No recommended changes.
I'll move it.
Moved by Jeff,
Second.
second by Pam. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next is Debt Service, and we'll take them individually. Principal of $7,135,000. No recommended changes.
Move it.
Moved by Charlie,
Second?
seconded by Victor. Is there discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Interest, $2,243,646. No recommended changes.
Move it.
Moved by Harry, seconded by...
I'll second it.
Jeff. Is there discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next is pension and contributions. There's a recommended reduction of $10,000, which would anticipate the line item would be volunteer officer stipend. That's for the fire. And the reason being a lower participation level. We anticipate that the line item can reduced from $70,000 to $60,000. So that budget in total would be $7,029,140.
I'll move that.
Moved by Victor,
I'll second it.
seconded by Charlie. Is there discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next is employee group insurance. $6,374,700 is recommended based on a reduction of $146,880, which would be revised estimate for health insurance premiums based on the partnership and other expenses. So that budget, as I mentioned, would be $6,374,700.
I'll move it.
Moved by
Second.
Victor,
I'll second.
seconded by Charlie. Is there discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next is municipal insurance, $2,758,365. No recommended changes.
I'll move it.
Moved by Jeff,
Second?
seconded by Harry. Is there discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next is contingency, recommending that request be reduced by $36,981. So the request of $2,152,061 would be would now be $2,115,080.
I'll move that.
Moved by Victor,
I'll second it, Joe.
seconded by Jeff. Is there discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we've already acted on the Board of Ed capital request. We'll move to the town capital budgets, which are, again, a part of the handout. And that's this one here. I think it's this one here. So on page, it's a page 71 is the reproduction here that we're looking at. So that we would fund the recommendation, and I'll run through these. The recommendation would be for the sinking fund for the assessor, would be, actually, the request was 90,000. We'd recommend 75,000. I believe that that would be sufficient. Next would be the Commission on Elderly Sinking Fund. We would recommend a 35,000 as requested. The engineering, the fire headquarters refueling, the $1 million, we would defer that to possible debt consideration down the line. Vets Park, we would be for 200,000 for the storm quality, and the ADA and storm quality, we'd recommend that go to ARPA funds, so it would not be general fund. And we'll vote on that subsequently. The Branford Point Wood Wharf, again, would be considered under ARPA, so that would not be funded. The $100,000 for the cattle crossing, we've already dealt with that in the previous agenda item. Supply Pond Bridge, of $2,079,300, would be a combination of grant and debts and debt service, so that would be not general fund, funded out of the general fund. Local Traffic Authority, the $15,000 would be a general fund item. Next page. The ambulance stretcher mount, power load, 30,000 would be approved, recommended in the general fund. The cardiac monitor and defibrillator would be recommended for 39,000. The breathing apparatus would be recommended for 85,000 as requested. The 40,000 for the radio sinking fund as requested would be funded. The ambulance sinking fund for 75,000 would be funded, and the fire apparatus of 300,000 would be recommended for the RTM as well. Moving on to the GGB vehicle, that would not be recommended, the 7,500. I believe, Jamie, you would accommodate that in some other fashion. Townwide exterior painting, again, would not be recommended. That could be accommodated in some other fashion. The future energy savings of 25,000 would be recommended to the RTM. Moving down to the electric vehicle for the human services, as well as the office upgrades. We've dealt with those in this current year based on prior agenda items. The IT backup appliance for information technology at 30,000 would be funded. The desktop computers of 60,000 would be funded. Actually, in an increased amount. We allocate 60,000 out of general fund and 30,000 out of ARPA funds, which we'll see.
The 30,000 was in an out year, so they're getting.
Pardon?
The 30,000 was in an out year.
Okay.
So it was requested, so it's getting moved up so that they could order them all together.
All right, thanks, Jim.
Yep.
Thought you were trying to pull a fast one on me here.
No.
Next was the library sinking fund at 30,000, which be funded as requested, and the parks and open space preserve projects would then be funded out of the current year, as I believe we funded out of the current year, right, Jim?
I'm sorry, what was that?
66,000, we took care of that one?
Yeah, the 6,000 we did through fund balance.
Gotcha. Moving to ballistics vest replacement would be recommended as requested at $9,132. The portable radios, $9,800 as requested. Speed detection, $12,000 as requested. Police vehicles, $130,000 as requested. And the vehicles of $220,000 along with $130,000 to equip it would also be recommended. Moving on to Public Works. Dock replacement of $85,000 would be moved to ARPA request, ARPA funding. Storm system of $45,000 would be funded or recommended. Road improvements, resurfacing, $550,000 would be recommended. The $20,000 for ADA ramps would be funded. Townwide line striping would be funded for $50,000. Downtown center maintenance of $25,000 would be funded. $45,000 for seawall repair as requested. $65,000 for sidewalks would be funded, and the DPW apparatus fund of $225,000 would be recommended to the RTM as well. Under the Recreation Department, $35,000 for vehicle replacement would be recommended, along with the $25,000 for the tennis court renovation at Foot Park baseball court, basketball court, I'm sorry, for $150,000 would be recommended. $20,000 for tree pruning program. $20,000 for fencing would be recommended. Basketball and tennis court renovation of $20,000 would be recommended. Field renovations of $20,000 would be funded as well. Next is solid waste, $180,000 for solid waste and recycling equipment fund would be funded at $180,000. Under the Treasurer's Department, we would recommend the $147,000 for the leasing of public works, as well as the lease for BOE, Board of Ed Technology, for $115,000. Recommend Coastal Resiliency Fund contribution of $310,000. And actually, the Board of Ed leasing, what's the other? That's the debt piece of it, Jim?
Basically, with the Board of Ed leasing, there's two components. There's $235,000 that the Board of Ed would actually be funding out of their operating budget, and then the other $115,000 from the town.
The town, okay. So that's the distinction of the other category in that line item. Next is water pollution control, submersible pump station and repair. $50,000 would be funded out of their own capital accounts, Jim?
Oh, sorry, the WPCA, yes.
Those are all, that other category is all,
yep.
It's not jumping out of me here. So, so those are all out of their reserve fund. Okay, so that's the submersible pumps for $50,000, the sewer line and manhole repair for $50,000, the $25,000 for the transfer switch and generator program, as well as the annual contribution of $225,000 to the reserve fund, and the apparatus of $75,000 would all be handled out of their particular fund balance and/or reserve funds. So I believe that takes care of the capital items. We'll vote on these in total and in subsequent motions. But for now, those, but actually what we'll do on this here, just to kind of solidify it, is that we've got the line item that we're looking at, because we did vote on the Board of Ed capital items. You've got $3,124,932,000, which is technically general fund monies, which again shows a reduction of the capital accounts only for funding purposes in general of $2,193,333. So the detail is obviously what we went over previously. So I would entertain a motion for that $3,124,932, which would be paid from taxation.
I move it, Joe.
Moved by Jeff.
Second.
Seconded. Is there discussion? I know we went through all of this. There'll be other motions, but I'm looking at at this particular line item here. So I think, any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We'll go down these items. I've already talked about the $147,000 for the lease. Entertain a motion on that. No changes.
I'll move it.
Moved by Jeff,
Second.
seconded by Harry. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, $115,000 for the BOE, Board of Ed lease.
I'll move that.
I'll
Moved by
second it.
Jeff, moved by Victor, seconded by Jeff. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so, I think that takes care of the general fund at this point, so we want to go through the other special funds, Jim?
Yeah, you're starting with the open space fund on
Yeah.
page 61.
Yeah, so then I'm gonna flip to the big book here on page 61, just so we cover all the bases. And the first one up is page 61, I'll wait till you folks find it. It's the first one is the open space budget, which again is self-funded. Total expenditure is $69,887.
I'll move it, Joe.
Been moved
Second.
by Jeff, seconded by Victor. No changes recommended. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next is Board of Ed Special Funds, which is the Shoreline Adult Education Enrichment Fund on page 62. Request is $71,600, no recommended changes.
Move it.
Moved by Victor,
I'll second it.
seconded by Jeff. Is there discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next is School Age Childcare Fund of $511,472, no recommended changes.
I'll move it.
Second.
Moved by Jeff, seconded by Pam. Is there discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next is Sewer Assessment Fund, request is $16,472, no recommended changes.
I'll move it.
Moved by Victor,
Second.
seconded by Charlie. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next is Sewer Utility Fund. Page 66, total expenditures, $4,813,105, no recommended changes.
I'll move it.
Moved by Victor,
Second.
seconded by Pam. Is there discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next is Animal Control Fund, page 68. Recommended budget, or requested is $450,105, no recommended changes.
I'll move it.
Moved by Jeff,
Second.
seconded by Harry. Is there discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next is Human Services Fund, page 70. Budget request of $1,913,499, no recommended changes.
I'll move it.
Moved by Jeff,
Second.
seconded by Charlie. Is there discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, do we need to vote on the ARPA funds, Jim?
Yes.
Okay, so the last handout we have, which is the ARPA funds. Again, we're touched on through various discussions tonight, including the capital budgets. And if the board is ready,
Yeah, got it.
and then the first up on that is under general government for again, I'm looking at the fiscal report of finance recommended fiscal 2024 is $30,000 for desktop computers for general government, for IT department. And then moving down for paving, $1 million for engineering, public works, street lining of $125,000, dock replacement, marine 5, $85,000, $400,000 for the Branford Wharf replacement, Vets Park ADA and stormwater upgrades for $200,000, and $225,000 for sidewalks. Moving to the next page, Health and Human Services, $50,000 for the basic needs, and that total is $2,115,000 that's recommended for expenditures in fiscal 2024.
I'll move it, Joe.
Moved by Jeff,
Second.
seconded by Victor. Is there discussion, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're going to, before we take a brief moment here for Jim and Catherine to print out the resolutions, I'd just like to recap what we have done here tonight, which would be to have expenditure changes of between capital and operating of $4,663,178, which would bring revised expenditures down to $130,510,768, with some additional considerations for revenue. The revenue number is an estimated $16,902,344, which would equate to a amount to be raised from taxation of $113,608,424, which would essentially equate to a mill rate of 29.95, or a half a mil increase, which represents 1.7% increase in the mill rate. That's right now the preliminary estimate based on what we intend to recommend to the RTM and for future consideration at our next board meeting. With that, we'll take a 5-minute or so break or pause so that we can print out the several resolutions that we need in order to move this on to the RTM.
Well, you know,
Did we get the new one? Did it just come? Oh, well, there it is.
I know.
they're always going this way.
I've never heard
Somebody.
All right, so we're going to continue, now that we've got the
favoritism.
suggested resolutions in order to move this forward and conclude tonight's workshop and meeting. And as I mentioned, the resolutions which we will entertain in a minute or two represent expenditures of $130,510,768 when considering revenues and allocation of fund balance of $16,902,344 would equate to a net to be raised from taxation of $113,608,424. The estimated grand list at this point is $3,879,790,337, and that would equate to a 29.95 mill rate, or a half a mill increase representing 1.7%. We are anticipating a 98.35 collection rate. So with that, I will read through the various resolutions. Resolved that the Board of Finance recommends to the RTM an appropriation of $63,483,569 to the Board of Education operating plus capital for fiscal year 23-24.
I move it, Joe.
Been moved,
Second.
seconded by Harry. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Resolved that the Board of Finance recommends to the RTM an appropriation of $67,027,199 for all other town departments for fiscal year 23-24.
I'll move it.
Moved by Harry,
Second.
seconded by Jeff. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Next is resolved that the Board of Finance hereby passes the following budget for the fiscal year 23-24. Board of Ed operating fund, Board of Ed operating budget, $62,911,644. Board of Ed capital and leases, $571,925, a subtotal of $63,483,569. Town departments, $67,027,199 for a total of $130,510,768.
I'll move that.
Moved by Victor,
Second it.
seconded by Jeff. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Resolved that the Board of Finance recommends the RTM an appropriation of $69,887 to the open space fund budget for fiscal year 23-24.
I'll move it.
Moved by Pam,
Second.
seconded by Harry. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Resolved that the Board of Finance recommends to the RTM an appropriation of $16,472 to the sewer assessment fund budget for fiscal year 23-24.
I'll move that.
Moved by
Second.
Victor, seconded by
Second.
Charlie. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Next is resolved that the Board of Finance recommends to the RTM an appropriation of $71,600 to the Board of Education Shoreline Adult Education Enrichment Fund budget for the fiscal year 23-24.
I'll move it.
Second.
Then moved and seconded by Pam. Is there discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next is resolved that the Board of Finance recommends to the RTM an appropriation of $511,472 to the Board of Education School Age Child Care Fund budget for the fiscal year 23-24.
I'll move it, Joe.
Been moved by Jeff.
Second.
Seconded by Harry. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Next is resolved that the Board of Finance recommends to the RTM an appropriation of $4,813,105 to the wastewater treatment plant budget for the fiscal year 2023-24.
I'll move it.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Is there discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Resolved that the Board of Finance recommends to the RTM an appropriation of $450,106 to the Animal Control Fund budget for the fiscal year 2023-24.
I'll move it.
Moved by Harry,
Second.
seconded by Pam. Is there a discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next, resolved that the Board of Finance recommends to the RTM an appropriation of $1,913,499 to the Human Services Special Revenue Fund budget for the fiscal year 23-24.
I'll move it.
I'll second it.
Charlie, seconded by Jeff. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next is resolved that the Board of Finance recommends to the RTM an appropriation of $420,000 to the lease fund budget for the fiscal year 23-24.
I'll move it.
Moved by Harry,
Second.
seconded by Pam. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next is resolved that the Board of Finance recommends to the RTM an appropriation of $2,115,000 to the ARPA fund budget for the fiscal year 2023-24.
I'll move that.
Moved
I'll
by
second it.
Victor, seconded by Jeff. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next is resolved that the Board of Finance recommends to the RTM that, with the exception of the first selectman who is elected to take 0% increase, salaries for the following elected officials increased by 2% for each of their 2-year terms of office, including second selectman, third selectman, treasurer, Board of Assessment Appeals, RTM moderator, and finance clerk.
I'll move that.
I'll second it.
Been moved by Victor, seconded by Jeff. Is there discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Next is resolved that the Board of Finance recommends to the RTM that the salary for the following elected officials increase by 2.25 for each of the two-year term of office. Town clerk.
I'll move it.
Moved by Harry,
Second it.
seconded by Pam. Is there discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we have nothing else on the agenda other than adjournment, and before we do that, I'd like to take the moment to just thank several people, including Henry on our BCTV operator, and Lisa Arpin, our town clerk, Catherine, Jim, and Jamie, as well as Board of Finance members for all the good work on this budget. And I'd entertain any comments from board members.
I'd like to thank Joe for the work you've done as well, Joe.
I'll second
Yeah,
that.
Joe, you've always moved it right along for us and, kept us right on target. I think we did a good job this year.
Thanks for that,
You're here.
Charlie. Jamie, any final comments?
Yeah, thanks. Well, first, I want to thank the board, certainly for their flexibility this year. As you mentioned at the beginning of the hearings, Joe, we are going through a transition with the budget documents, and you actually, accommodated our schedule by moving the hearings back a week. I know it was a little bit of a change, but I want to thank you for your understanding, and certainly thank Jim and Catherine. Probably 4 weeks ago, and I think Jim was like, who decided to make this change? You trusted me, but I knew they could pull it off. Really, there is a lot that goes into this, in putting this budget together every year. It's a lot more than I think people certainly recognize. But I do think at the end of the day, going to this transition to the new budget format, we're going to have a product that really will be something that, that I think not only the boards, the RTM, the Board of Finance, and the departments, but the public will really appreciate it. It is really going to be a great system. And once again, can't thank Jim and Catherine enough. I mean, they really have taken this project on, and in the coming weeks we'll have a real nice product. And also just want to commend really the board and the finance department for once again delivering a budget that really balances the needs. It really meets the needs of our community, continues to provide quality, high level of service and programs to our residents, but always striking that balance, being sensitive to the taxpayer. So thank you once again for your work.
Thanks, Jamie.
Thank you.
Yes, and the board in particular really thanks Catherine and Jim for the great work. A lot of behind the scenes, a lot of effort, and look forward to to using the clear.gov application going forward. So thanks a lot, and appreciate it. So with no other business to come before the board, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second it.
The motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
This program was brought to you in part through the support of the Town of Brantford. Watch town meetings and other videos on demand at BrantfordTV.org.